wonder why people make things so complicated? Or maybe you wonder, like, you're the one losing your mind? The other day, I was reading about the Giving Pledge. It's a philanthropy run by Bill and Melinda Gates and Warren Buffett. And they go around the world and try to encourage the wealthiest families on the planet to donate the bulk of their wealth to philanthropy. Now, on the surface, this sounds like a great idea, right? I mean, I'm all for helping our fellow man, giving to those in need. But as I sat there and thought about it, I thought, these families that have amassed incredible wealth, billions, they probably did that in terms of ownership, right? Through a company, corporations, conglomerates, whatever. And I thought, instead of just writing a check to philanthropy, if it's the same amount of money, why don't you just give it to the employees that work for you? Like, if it's the same amount of money, why are you doing it this way instead of this way? Because there are things that will happen if you pay your company employees more. There are things that will happen that can't happen through philanthropy. People who are paid more can afford to live closer to work, for example. They can buy affordable housing easier. They don't have to drive 10 billion miles and burn up the environment with exhaust, spend time in traffic, stress out their bodies. They can afford to invest in themselves and their children, maybe pay a few more taxes to fund better schools so their kids get a better education. They might be able to afford better health insurance, maybe go see the doctor without these massive out-of-pocket. There's a whole lot that can happen with immediate quality of life, economic impact on communities when you just decide to pay people more versus doing the philanthropy option, where you go through a third party and lavish events, have administrators run these things. Also, the problem with philanthropy is if you're relying on very wealthy people to write a check, which is often tax deductible, or you get a hospital wing named after you, it all looks very glamorous. I've been hired to be at some of these glitzy events. It just means that this way of spending your money, maybe to feel less guilty, I don't know, it doesn't really change anything because it's not really impacting the structure that keeps people kind of stuck where they are, not able to have enough, right? It's not enough of a boost. Maybe people are barely hanging on. They can make it, but just enough that if you really want systemic change and to reduce this huge difference between the haves and the have-nots, you might pay people more. There's also an awareness that whatever you're paying people, I know the mindset from business, and I know because I was in corporate for a long time, there's this idea of what the market wage is. Whether it's minimum wage, the starting salary for a cost accountant, whatever. Supply and demand, boom, that's the number. And as we're a smart business person, we pay the market rate, right? The problem with that is that there are many costs that are not measurable, but definitely are in play that are not, you can't see it through supply and demand. Costs like climate change from sitting in traffic and burning up fossil fuels that people have to do, or when kids don't get a good enough education, or crime, or people unemployed because they don't have the skills, whatever it is, that stuff costs something. It's just not measurable, right? So you can't just say, well, the market rate is X. It's probably a lot more than that. So even if it's not measurable, if you can just say, okay, we know it's not measurable, but we know it exists, right? And we're going to pay above whatever the natural supply and demand market of minimum wage is, and we're just going to peg it up a bit. That might be a more impactful way of solving a lot of these problems that you don't get if you just do philanthropy. Because if you just write a check to a third party and it goes off to fund all these other things, nothing changes over here. People are still struggling another day. Now, I'm not saying philanthropy is not bad, but it does keep the current power structure the way it is, and that's probably why wealthy people like to do that. It makes your conscience feel better, but it doesn't really impact things. Now, there are some things that philanthropy is better at. polio eradication, maybe funding large scale efforts? Yes, we probably need a combination of both. You're thinking of donating, just pay your people more. It has a bigger ripple effect into the economy. They can pay more taxes for better schools, all this stuff, rather than writing a check to a philanthropy that funds big galas and stuff like that. And I know you won't get your name in lights, but this is what I thought of as I was pondering these things that people do with lots of money. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. You want to stay connected? Follow me on other platforms. I don't know how much longer. TikTok's going to be around. You know where to go to look for my information.